Thank you so much, Mike, and welcome back, everyone. I know it's been a minute, and it certainly feels like longer than 2 months since we last gathered here. So I'm really excited to be back. As a reminder on our format this year, these webinars are scheduled on the first Thursday of every month at 2 p.m. Pacific time. As always, these calls are free and open to all. In general, we try and focus on things that are relevant nationwide, but please note that we will mention a few California-specific items since that really is our area of expertise. Last month, actually that was June, our topic was end of the school year compliance tasks. That recording is up on YouTube and in LunchAssist Pro. Today, Jen and I are going to be talking about back to school tasks, policies, and procedures. But before we get into our deep dive topic today, we have some federal and state updates that we'd like to share. So let's get into it. One of the biggest pieces of national news this summer has been the passage of the Reconciliation Bill, or BBB, on July 4th. As y'all have likely already heard, there were huge cuts to SNAP and Medicaid. But what's less obvious is the impact that these cuts will have on school meals. While some things don't go into effect for a few years and we might not be feeling the impacts right away, the reality is that states will soon face some big cost burdens for these programs, which will force states to make really tough decisions on the budgets that could impact school meals, both directly and indirectly. Potential impacts include fewer students being directly certified, increased paperwork burdens for families and school nutrition operators, less available state funding, which could mean less money to support school nutrition programs, and less support for kids and families, which could make our meal programs even more vital as a hunger safety net. So, quick shout out to the Food Research and Action Center for always keeping us up to date and informed here. We'll put a link to their latest blog, breaking it all down, into the chat. I'd also like to note how all of this affects CEP. So, cuts to SNAP and Medicaid directly impact CEP by potentially reducing the number of families who automatically qualify for school meals, which determines the identified student percentage, or ISP, for CEP schools. Fewer qualifying schools could result in fewer children who would have access to healthy school meals. Now, while we know there won't be an impact on direct certification this year, at the local level, one thing we might consider doing to act preemptively here is rebasing, or first time applying, for CEP in April of 2026, while your ISP is still high, to lock in those direct certification numbers for the next 4 years. Now, is there anything else we could be doing right now? Well, the House and Senate have adjourned for their congressional August recess. So now is the time to schedule in-district meetings with your members of Congress while they're at home through September 2nd. It's also a prime opportunity to organize site visits and meetings with other community leaders to highlight the importance of school meals as well as the potential impacts of the reconciliation bill. And we'll throw into the chat some resources from the Food Research and Action Center to help you with scheduling meetings with your representatives at your district. So, for information about all of this, I also recommend watching the School Nutrition Association's Advocacy in Action webinar. Last week, they provided a really great breakdown of how exactly states would be burdened by cuts to SNAP and how these provisions may impact school meals. So we'll also drop that link into the chat. And one last federal update I'd be remiss if I didn't mention are the school year 25-26 reimbursement rates, which USDA announced a few weeks ago for school meals and CACFP. Note that USDA foods entitlement rates, aka commodities or cash
Pues
and
la
weight,
Albera no
still
sale en el
haven't been
Lunch
released.
Assist meeting.
So hopefully we'll see those soon. In the meantime, take a look at these handouts for an overview of reimbursement rates by program. Next up, I'd like to bring on our special guest here to discuss the California state budget and what schools can expect going into this school year. We've got Abby Halperin from the Center for Ecoliteracy. Welcome, Abby. Abby, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about the Center for Ecoliteracy before we get started?
Sure. Thanks, Emma. It's so nice to see you all. For those who don't know me, I'm Abby Halperin, the Senior Policy and Evaluation Manager at the Center for Ecoliteracy. The Center for Ecoliteracy is a nonprofit. We advance change in TK through 12 education and school food systems to support students and the people who nourish them. This year, we're celebrating 10 years of California Food for California Kids. This initiative supports school districts in providing students with freshly prepared, locally sourced meals and experiences connecting the cafeteria, classroom, and garden. There are now 150 participating school districts, and I see some familiar faces here today. Combined, these districts serve about 41% of the meals and students in the state. The network is free to join, and we can drop a link in the chat. Our policy work is deeply informed and driven by the members of the California Food for California Kids Network. For instance, we began advocating for school meals for all because the network told us it was their number one policy priority. And many network members have joined us to advocate, whether that's signing on to letters, meeting with their legislator, hosting a site visit, or providing public comment at a hearing. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So, Abby, you and your team have been true champions of universal meals in California, leading advocacy efforts across the state. This year, the state budget allocates 1.93 billion to school meals for all, which provides free breakfast and lunch for California's 5.8 million TK through 12 students. Has anything changed this year from previous years with universal meals?
We are just so thankful that in a year with a $12 billion budget deficit, the governor and the California legislature have continued to prioritize feeding hungry students. The first thing that's changed is that we have more students participating in school meals than ever before, despite declines in attendance and enrollment. Around 1 billion school meals will be served next year in California. And that is thanks to your hard work serving students every day. So the state has upped their contribution to school meals for all by around 90 million this year to account for that increase in participation and a small cost of living increase. We're also glad to see a small bump to the state meal reimbursement, which for the first time will be over $1 per meal. This is amazing and is in line with the cost of living increase across all education programs that we saw. So in total, the state's going to contribute around $1.9 billion to California's School Meal for All program, but that's actually only about 40% of the funding we need. The rest, nearly $3 billion, comes from the USDA.
Got it. And thank you for that breakdown. Now, let's talk about KIT funds here. For those who aren't familiar or in California, this stands for Kitchen Infrastructure and Training, supporting school nutrition professionals with training and equipment to serve more freshly prepared, locally sourced meals. This year, the state budget includes a third round of funding with 145 million being allocated. Is there anything different about this round of KIT funding?
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge just how thankful we are to see another round of KIT funds. We've seen and heard so many stories across the state of how it's really helped school nutrition programs meet the increased demand with school meals for all and provide students with more freshly prepared meals. So the last time we received KIT funding, I think as you all know, was back in the 2022 state budget. And this round is a little different because last time there was 600 million for KIT. This year during a really tough budget year, it's 145 million. And so policymakers decided to make the program competitive for the first time. We don't know much about what that competitive process will look like. We're hoping it's easy. But we do know that the language gives priority to districts that use a federal provision, whether that's CEP or Provision 2, and that have obligated at least 50% of their 2022 KIT funds. So while we were also really excited to see the 2022 deadline for KIT was extended for another year because we know that some projects got held up in Department of State architects or other things that took some more time. So glad to see that was extended. If you haven't yet spent 50% of your KIT funds or don't have a plan for it, now might be a good time to start thinking about that if you want to be eligible for this third round of KIT funding. Also new this year, for the very first time, the KIT program now gives schools the flexibility to purchase California grown food as one of the now 3 buckets that funds could be used for. So we're really excited about that option for California districts.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of could potentially have been in response to the cancellation of local foods for schools at the federal level. At the federal level, USDA also canceled the Patrick Lee Farm to School grant program for fiscal year 2025, but What about farm to school funding in California?
Yeah, we were really sad to see that farm to school program being canceled nationally. I think a lot of people don't realize the different scales here. So the federal nationwide program was 14 million in 2024, right? And this year, the state is set to invest 24.9 million in farm to school for just California. Um, so this new round of funding includes 20 million for a fourth round of the farm to school incubator program, $3 million to provide technical assistance to climate smart ag farmers, and 1.9 million for the amazing Office of Farm to Fork. I know we have some folks on this call if you're interested in connecting with them, and that will really increase opportunities for outreach, engagement, and training. The Center for Ecoliteracy has also been supporting, relatedly, Assembly Bill 675, which is being authored by Majority Leader Aguirre Curry. This would, for the first time, put the farm to school program in statute, which is the first step to making it a permanently funded program. This is particularly important because we're going to get a new governor in 2027, and first partner Jennifer Newsom has been one of our biggest champions for farm to school. So AB 675 is currently moving through the legislature with nearly unanimous bipartisan support.
That is really exciting. And I definitely did not realize how strong farm to school funding was in the state compared to the federal level. Now, I've also been hearing about some investments in our school nutrition workforce. Can you speak a bit about those funds?
Yeah, so thanks to the advocacy of our partners at NextGen California, Chef Ann Foundation, and the Office of Kat Taylor, the budget included two investments in the school nutrition workforce. The first would continue the successful Chef Ann Healthy School Food Pathways program for another year. And the second would create a new $10 million program to boost workforce recruitment and retention. There aren't a lot of details yet about that new program. You can see an outline in Ed Code, but it will be a competitive program.
Perfect. Now, this is a new program, but is there anything else in the budget that impacts school nutrition programs in California?
Yeah, I think something that everyone should be aware of is Assembly Bill 1264, which is being authored by Assemblymember Gabriel. This is the bill that proposes to eliminate the particularly harmful ultra processed foods from school meals. It's a phased in approach and involves developing that definition of particularly harmful ultra processed foods, creating requirements for vendors to report those ultra processed foods that they sell to schools. And then if this passes, California school districts will need to start phasing out those particularly harmful ultra processed foods by 2028. And by 2035, they could actually risk losing their state meal reimbursement if they serve a particularly harmful ultra processed food. So it's just something that we're tracking, and we think it's something that everyone should be aware of. I will note, it has a lot of support. Assemblymember Gabriel is chair of the Assemblymember Budget Committee, and it has the support of the governor. So it's passed nearly unanimously through every policy committee so far. And there was a $5 million study in the budget that will help inform this definition of particularly harmful ultra processed foods.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much. And I know that you have this beautiful blog breaking it down for everyone here. So I'm going to put that into the chat as well.
Thanks, Emma.
Thank you so much, Abby, for joining us. All right, folks, it's early August. This means that most schools are in full back to school mode. School years are cyclical seasons, but year to year, things always seem to slightly change, right? Let's talk about what's new this year, starting with updates to the meal pattern requirements as a result of the final rule. We know that USDA is gradually phasing in required changes over time, but Jen, could you remind us what goes into effect this school year?
Yeah, definitely. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Abby. That was such a beautiful overview. I really appreciate you being here and all of the leadership from the Center for Eco Literacy. You guys are the best. Yeah, just really, I appreciate your time joining us today. And then I have a few more updates to run through for y'all. I know everyone's super busy getting back to school. So one of the things we just want to point out a few things so that nothing falls off radar. I know it's like just hectic this time of year. Um, so one of the first things, like kind of along these like state and federal updates, the final rule updates. So Catherine on our team has been like just smashing out new resources. So good job, Catherine. We all appreciate everything you've been working on. One of the things that Catherine just helped publish is this final rule updates guide. So I'm kind of consolidating the final rule updates that, as you remember, some of the updates already went into effect. Some of the flexibilities like may have gone into effect last year. And then there's a few that are just starting for the first time July 1st that are a bit more restrictive. So we'll just highlight the ones that are a bit more restrictive. And then remember, we also have past webinars where we've done more of a deep dive on these, but just kind of gloss over these, and then we will throw the link to this resource in the chat, and then it's also on the website. So added sugar limit. So as you're looking at your back to school menus, we've been kind of talking to some of our clients about this as well. Just making sure your breakfast cereals have that less than 6 grams of added sugar per dry ounce. I know a couple of our clients were like, oh shoot, our cereal that's on our bid doesn't comply. So we need to figure out like to do a contract addendum or maybe do a micro purchase or figure out something procurement related. Same thing with yogurt, making sure your yogurt has less than 12 grams of added sugar per 6 ounces. So those two items are probably the biggies. And then if you're under a review this year, remember the auditors will start looking at these two things these three things, flavored milk too. Most people are already in compliance with the flavored milk, especially in California. Most of the dairies have already been meeting this, but really that breakfast cereal and yogurt, just go double check your labels as you're launching school and make sure that you're in compliance with those restrictions. Along similar lines, your NSLP after school snacks. So if you're serving NSLP after school snacks, just double check your meal pattern and make sure you've pulled off like your grain-based desserts. So granola bars are always one that I like trip out that's a grain-based dessert. And then the limits on added sugars in cereal apply across the board. One thing that it's funny because when this first came out, everyone, including us, was like, it's aligned with CACFP snacks. But this summer, as we were developing some updated trainings, we realized there's just a couple things that are same, but different on the NSLP after school snacks final rule update to the meal pattern. It's not exactly the same as CACFP snacks. Like, they can never just make it the same. It's always got to have a particular nuance to keep us all employed. So,
Right.
one thing that we wanted to highlight is that there's this kind of almost sneaky like juice restriction. If you're running NSLP snacks, you'll remember from lunch that no more than half of the weekly fruit or veggie offerings can be in the form of juice at lunch. Now, this also applies to NSLP snacks, but doesn't apply to CACFP snacks, just to keep us all on our toes. And then the 80% weekly whole grain requirement is applicable at snack. And that's, again, a difference between CACFP because CACFP is just one of the CACFP grains per day has to be a whole grain. So hopefully you have a meal pattern or a menu planning system that kind of has been updated and has all these programmed, but maybe do a quick double check of your snack menus if you have those. And then vegetables at breakfast. This one is just a reminder, anyone who has any veggies in lieu of fruit at breakfast. So like if you have hash browns on your menu, for example, those are fine to serve if you just do it one day a week. So if you just have hash browns on Monday, no worries. If you want to offer vegetables 2 days a week or more, make sure you have a variety of you have to have at least 2 subgroups. So if you're going to do hash browns every day, then make sure you have like a bag of baby carrots out as well. Which I was surprised when I was working at Hemet, we had a lot of kids taking carrots at breakfast. So, and then Buy American is the last one. And this is probably one of the ones that is going to be the most cumbersome. Would love to hear how you guys are planning on meeting the tracking requirements. So please, share in the chat. I'm sure we're all kind of trying to figure this out together, but this is now in effect, this whole tracking of your food costs. So now basically you have to be able to show how many dollars you spent on domestic versus non-domestic. And the trouble with this is that these types of reports aren't always available from all vendors, right? So like if you buy produce, it's not a sure thing that like your produce company is going to be able to say, okay, over the course of the year, you spent $3,000 on bananas and $37,000 on this other, non-domestic. So hopefully the vendors will create some systems upgrades and provide velocity reports that kind of break down domestic versus non-domestic. But that's going to be the most tricky part of this because there are waivers that like the state is approving waivers. All states have different waiver protocols, but there are waivers. So if you don't meet the 10% cap on total food purchases, there's some flexibility there. But everyone, regardless of if you have a waiver or not, has to be able to track. And so, and then this is also going to be part of your AR. If you're on AR this year, they're going to be looking at what is your system for tracking domestic food costs versus non-domestic food costs. So a resource that we have to support on this is this beautiful guide that Arizona just published. They have really great resources and they've just been updating this. In fact, we saw them update a few things on it yesterday as well. So check out this Buy American Accommodation Quick Guide from Arizona. And yeah, let us know as well, like how you're strategizing on tracking food costs. We'd love to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love that guide from Arizona. They also have some pretty great monthly webinars as well that I also like to attend. So big shout out to them for all their great resources. I also wanted to say that we did talk about updates to Buy American on our February episode of the lunch break. So definitely check that out if you haven't seen that. And let's just talk a little bit more about back to school season here. It's a great time to gather our staff, right, to make sure we're all on the same page and ready for the school year, including training our team on all of these new final rule updates. I know that you and Catherine have been so hard at work updating all of our training videos in LunchAssist Pro, which we're all so grateful for. So, Jen, as a former director and someone who runs a training organization, what's your best advice for tackling back to school training?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. I think this is like one of the most exciting parts of the school year is like those couple of days that some people get to like gather their team and have PD days, bring everyone back. It's all this like fresh energy, like smell of school supplies. But one thing we wanted to pose out to everyone is curious like how everyone's been doing back to school trainings and what's been working well for you all. Um, for us, one of the things that we want to ground this in is just a reminder, especially if there's any new directors or new staff here. So remember that there's these USDA training requirements, right? So essentially, like as we start out the school year, we want to just make sure we have a plan in place for making sure that all of our staff get the training hours. And then there's also training topic requirements as well. So everyone needs that civil rights training. And then all nutrition directors have a new requirement for procurement related training. And then any other staff that work, like if you have a buyer, they would need that procurement training. And then there's food safety training. So all nutrition directors need at least 8 hours of food safety training every 5 years. You might be just accomplishing that through your Serve Safe training. And then California also encourages like annual job related training related to food safety. So kind of keeping that all in mind, we created a little back to school training checklist of kind of the essentials that we would recommend folks do um, train on at the beginning of the school year. So this is actually now also a playlist within Lunch Assist Pro. So if you want to use videos for this, that's great. You can go in there. But of course, in-person training is always the best, right? Like getting people together, breaking bread, doing hands-on activities. That's always the gold standard. So this can also be useful to like check off what you're going to do on your in-person trainings, or maybe you want to use in-person training time to do things that you can't do virtually, right? So that's kind of and that's one of the reasons I like publishing training videos is not because I think they're the best way to train. Like it's definitely not the best way to train, but the best thing to do is to use your training time in person for things that you can only do hands-on, right? Like maybe some culinary knife skills or maybe some like really cool group activities where you guys are all talking and mingling. And then some of these videos can supplement throughout the year to make sure you get your civil rights in, or can help you break up your talking if you're the only one training at that in-person meeting give yourself a 15-minute breather, play the civil rights video while you set up your next activity. So that's some of the ways you can use these offerings that we have. And we have been super hard at work updating everything so it's in compliance with the new changes from USDA. So you can see here, these are just since June, and really some of these were like published, I think, this morning, the 11 new and improved pro lessons. So we've split a few of them. So offer versus serve used to be one, and now it's split between breakfast and lunch. Same with meal pattern, and then a couple new ones in the mix as well. So super excited for you all to check out those. And then as you're thinking about kind of back to school training, the other thing you want to make sure you're getting done is the tracking component, right? Especially because it's like a new year. So like just make sure you track everything straight away. So one thing that's available to all of us for free is the USDA professional standards tracking tool. So that's like a website you can log into to track training. We also created LunchAssist Pro. So many of you already have access to this. It does all the same things, but it's like fewer clicks. And Mike's been super hard at work doing enhancements with our software developers so that you have fewer clicks. You can just like select your whole team and track in like 3 clicks, and it's really a lot easier to use even than our system used to be, and definitely fewer clicks than the USDA system. So however you track, just make sure you have a tracking system, and then you think about that training plan, how you're going to meet the topics, the hours, and the tracking requirements for the year. And that'll set you up not only for like success, making sure all of our folks know what they're doing and they feel confident, but also so you have all that paperwork that you're going to need for your AR.
Absolutely. And I just want to give another big shout out to Mike because now it makes training and tracking all of that really easy within Pro. So I know he's been hard at work at getting all those features ready and launched for the new school year. Now, another thing we'd like to do, ideally before school officially starts back up, is make sure our cafeterias have all of the required signage posted. I heard the legend about posters growing legs and walking out of the cafeteria over summer. So, can you give us a quick reminder of what signage we need to have displayed?
Yeah, definitely. I know that was always like a frustration when I was a director and thinking like, wait, I know we had this signage, but maybe the school got painted over the summer and it's for good reason. It all disappeared. So just kind of as we start out the school year, making sure when our staff go back, all the proper signage is posted. We always kind of go through this on our checklist, but we had a few requests to put, a sign about the signs. But this is something that you can dish out to your staff at back to school training. And maybe they can use to just check off, yep, I've got everything posted. So all these things should be posted in each school site. The only thing that's like a maybe is the food handlers card, because not every county or state requires food handlers cards. But everything else should be posted in your school cafeterias. And so hopefully this is helpful as like a visual to kind of check, 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 make sure we've got everything in compliance.
That's beautiful, and I love that signage guide. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the school year 25-26 reimbursement rates are out. But what do folks actually need to do at these rates?
Yes. So hopefully you've seen the reimbursement rates. Everything got published, I think maybe like a week or two ago. So we've got the federal rates, we've got the state rates. So that's really exciting to kind of see the cost of living adjustments and whatnot that have gone up here. So then what do we actually do with these rates? So that's a really good question. Thinking on the POS company side, if you have a point of sale and you like to use some of those management reports that calculate your claim costs and everything at the end of the month to see what your revenue and reimbursement is going to be, then your rates should typically be programmed in the back end. It depends on your POS company. We were actually just asking Mike this morning because he used to work for a few different POS companies. So he was saying that usually they get uploaded by your POS company, but it depends. Some of the smaller companies you might have to manually enter your rates. So you might want to check that. And then some of them you have to just agree. You have to click like I accept these rates. Make sure those are all programmed into your POS if you use one. If you're in a private school in California or you're outside of a state with universal meals, then you're going to want to be looking at those reimbursement rates potentially to determine your paid lunch equity requirements, not applicable in non-pricing programs. Um, I also kind of like to give a plug for updating any budget assumptions. So if you've been working with your business office on a budget, then that's probably based on, you might be saying, oh, I think I'm going to serve 4 million meals this year, multiplied by the reimbursement rate. You can update those budget assumptions now that you have the actual reimbursement rates. If you're in California on CACFP, a lot of folks run this inter-program vending procedure, and there's a workbook and a procedure that you do annually. That's all available on the website if you want to log in to get that. So you'll want to update your school year 25-26 inter-program vending agreement. And typically the reimbursement rates are helpful for calculating those. And then the final thing is setting adult meal prices. Now, the only tricky thing with setting adult meal prices, because the USDA and state adult meal pricing tools are based on reimbursement rates for free meals. But the only tricky part about that is that we don't have commodity rates because we're also supposed to be factoring in our entitlement and commodity rates. We have been talking to our sources at state agencies, and it doesn't seem like anyone has these. They haven't been published yet. So we know some folks who've been reaching out directly to USDA and it's crickets. So hopefully entitlement rates are coming soon. But you can see here, we did go ahead and update the adult meal pricing in the tool that's available in LunchAssist Pro. We just put like it just says estimate on USDA foods. We just left the USDA foods value from school year 24-25. So this is not exactly accurate because it's using the old entitlement value. We don't know what the entitlement value will be for this year, but you can see in California for a non-pricing program, it's looking like this is going to be somewhere around $6.16. You may also need to be adding sales tax on top of this. Most public schools in California are supposed to charge sales tax, so that would be even on top of this. So let's say you come up with an adult meal price, maybe $7. That does sound quite high. So one pro tip we had for you was to potentially consider setting two prices. So this adult meal pricing regulation is surrounding complete adult meals. But like seriously, does anyone actually buy like adults? Do they really do a complete meal? Usually they just want a slice of pizza, right? Or one of your beautiful entree salads. So one thing that we have seen a lot of schools do very successfully is, yes, you might have that compliant adult meal price at $7, and that's for a complete meal with milk and fruits and vegetables and an entree. But if we're being honest, most adults just want the entree. They're just coming up for like one of your beautiful burritos or a slice of pizza. So you can have adult a la carte pricing that they can take advantage of, right? So you might be able to still feed adults on campus who want to eat your delicious food and just want to buy an entree for $4 or $5. And then if they want the complete meal, maybe it's $7. So how do you set that pricing? Just like a reminder on non-program food pricing, right? So typically what you want to do is set your non-program food pricing. Like let's say you have an a la carte price, you want to set that 2.5 to 3 times the food cost. That's not a real rule. It's more of a rule of thumb. And what we've experienced when we get feedback through clients from resource management unit at California, for example, they're like, oh, if we see that, then we kind of feel like it's enough. So, and that will help you be in compliance with the non-program food revenue tool. You don't have to have separate adult a la carte prices versus student a la carte prices. You can just have one a la carte price for anyone who buys that slice of pizza individually, for example. And perhaps you only sell a la carte to adults. It depends on how you have things set up. But this is just an offering, kind of an idea, and some things that we see in practice when we're talking to all of our clients out there.
Thank you, Jen. That's a great pro tip. Honestly, that's super helpful to understand and kind of see examples as well and how it works for other people. But speaking of setting prices and resource management and being in compliance, fall also marks the beginning of audit season, right? We got procurement reviews, administrative reviews, and the like. So to make sure we're keeping up with compliance, I was hoping we could go over school nutrition policies and procedures that we need to keep up to date throughout the school year. What policies and procedures do we need to have on file?
That is such a great question, and a really good point about all the policies and procedures to help keep us in compliance, because that's kind of step one when you're looking at, like, let's say you do know you're going to have an AR this year or a procurement review. One of the things we know is that you're going to have to submit a whole bunch of policies and procedures. So it's a great way to get started on any reviews that you have upcoming. Um, One of the reasons we actually started LunchAssist Pro was because we, wanted to create some training videos so that people didn't have to recreate the wheel every time on civil rights or offer versus serve. But also was because over the years, I had developed all these procedure templates and we wanted a way to kind of like share those more widely. And then as the years have gone by, we've iterated on these. And so these policies and procedure templates that we have are really great. They've been revised. We just did a big overhaul of all of our templates. But even if you don't use our templates, this checklist here is a really good check to see, like, do you have these policies and procedures, even if you've written them from scratch, which is amazing. And I know a lot of programs do. Um, then make sure you have these like core procedures, if you will. So if we kind of zoom in, these are the things that you're going to want to make sure you have within your program and that you've been updating and that are kind of like current for this year. So you can see here, these are kind of like our core cafeteria procedures that all staff should really be familiar with. And so things like alternative points of service, like your field trips, Saturday school, meals in the classroom is a big one. Those of you who have meals in the classroom probably know what a pain it can be to make sure they're in compliance, whether it's breakfast in the classroom or special needs classrooms that need to bring food back. We all have to have civil rights complaint procedures. Those need to be updated with the new non-discrimination statement. Food waste reduction procedures, especially if you have like a share table, food donation, if you're using seconds, anything like that. It's really good to have that outlined and can help you be in compliance with California's SB 1383. HACCP plan, we all have one of those, but is it dusty? Has it been updated? Does it really reflect what's going on? Local school wellness policy, that's more of a board policy, but just kind of checking to make sure it's in place. Meal counting and claiming procedures, we've really done a big overhaul on this one. So if you've been using our template in the past, I would encourage you to download the new one because we've done like a lot of robust work on this. Emily, who's on the call, is one of our senior consultants, and she's really put a lot of thought into this from her former auditor brain to make sure that it's written in a way that helps you think through compliance on all your meal counting procedures so that you don't miss something that you might like not think of at the time when you're writing a procedure. And then of course, special diets. So these are some of the things you probably want to have in your cafeteria and available to all your staff. And then these ones are like kind of more behind the scenes, these resource management fiscal procedures. But you do need to have internal control procedures. We've done a big overhaul on this one as well, based on some feedback from ARs last year. If you do that inter-program vending with CACFP, and then of course non-program food revenue procedures to make sure you can show the state how you're logically getting to your adult meal pricing, how you're getting to your a la carte pricing, making sure that revenue is going to the right places and things like that. And then last but not least, you've got your procurement procedures, code of conduct, micro purchase self-certifications. Again, these are kind of more behind the scenes ones, but good things to have on file. So you can find templates for all of these on LunchAssist Pro. And like I said, we've done a big update over the last few weeks. And so if you've been using them, I would download them again because we've got them all spiffed up for school year 25-26.
True that. So much work has been going into those from our whole team, especially you and Catherine. Big shout out to the whole team here. And as you mentioned, we made all these updates right on our end, but from the school district's point of view, many of these need to be updated on an annual basis as well, like the procurement procedures. So, how do you suggest people manage policy and procedure updates from year to year?
Yeah, so this is something that like when we work with clients, we help look at policies every year. Every year we open up all these policies and we run through them and we say, okay, meal counting, like, have you changed anything? Did you go from CEP to P2 or P2 to CEP? So that inevitably creates change, right? And as we've gone through this over the years, we've kind of developed some different ways of doing things. First and foremost, the basics is like making sure that you have editable copies of all your policies and procedures, right? And that's really helpful to have in like a shared drive where anyone on your team, or maybe just a couple people on your admin team, or if you're leaving the district, you can like share with the new person coming on the team, but something that can be editable. Oftentimes when a new director comes in and starts to work with us, they're like, I'm starting from scratch. No one left me anything. So don't leave your district like that if you're moving on. Leave them with a nice little Google Drive of policies and procedures that the next director can edit from. And then have a process to review these at least annually. I would say like at the end of June, kind of starting into like July, August is like a really good time to really revamp policies and procedures, or earlier if you can, knowing what programs you're going to go into next year, even thinking about like new federal updates that are coming in, or state updates. One thing that we have started to do that we didn't used to is kind of like archiving procedures at the end of one year. So in certain highly regulated industries like healthcare, most policies and procedures are stored in a policy management software that tracks changes from day to day, year to year, and archives like this was what the policy was that year, for example, or on that day when this incident happened, this was the procedure. So obviously, schools were a little bit more scrappy. We are highly regulated, but we don't always have as much, sophisticated systems as like a healthcare system might have. Um, but you can kind of emulate this by archiving your policies at the end of the year, and then either like making a copy for the next year or starting from a new template for the next year. So that's just something to consider, because sometimes the state does also want to see, like for procurement, for example, they're going to ask, what was your procurement procedures for school year 24-25? So if you have a living policy document where you've been making changes, then you might need to like be able to kind of backtrack a little bit to see what was in effect for that year. So just something to consider. But just kind of thinking through what your system is, that's sort of what we wanted to prompt here. And then letting you guys know you can download fresh copies of a lot of the templates because they've been updated.
Thank you. And thanks for that big overview there. Now, before we end our call today, I also wanted to remind folks of the monthly checklists that we have. These are great resources to help you keep on track throughout the school year. We'll pop those into the chat, both July and August checklists. So before we end and open it up to Q&A, Jen, is there anything you want to call out that we haven't discussed already?
The main thing I just wanted to point out, especially because I know we have some new faces and we have some newer directors and folks who joined our listserv recently. So we publish these checklists every month. They are a labor of love. We put a lot of thought and care into them. So if you, let's say you just came back from summer break and you missed the July one, I definitely recommend grabbing July and August because they kind of go sequential throughout the year. So you can follow along. We wish we could just publish like a calendar for the year, but things change so much in our industry that we like to keep these as current and fresh as possible. So that's why we publish them on a monthly basis, but they do go sequential. And then those of you who are clients know that we track this in your project management system so that we don't lose track of something. But for those of you who are using the version from our newsletter, don't feel like you have to do like the July tasks. They don't have to be done in July. Some of them you can carry forward to another month if you're really busy. But just make sure like you kind of can check the boxes by the end of the year on everything that's on these lists, because they will help prepare you for any audits, make sure you're in compliance with everything. That's kind of like the spirit that goes into it, is like making sure you got all your bases checked. And we did do a little facelift to the August one. We're super excited about the cute new format. And then one last thing I was just going to point out that we did just update the social media toolkit. This is kind of just inspiration. There's some sample social media posts, which of course you can use those, but also just for inspiration to flip through to see if you, want to post something similar on your social media accounts to help with that community outreach to raise awareness about school meals.
Yeah, thank you for those great resources. I'm really excited that all of these have been updated and refreshed for the new school year. So thank you so much. That's all the questions I have for you today. As we wrap up here, folks want to put any more questions they have into the chat. We'll be answering those shortly. As a reminder, all follow-up resources will be sent to everyone who's registered. For pro members, all the recordings, slides, and related materials for this webinar series will be available in the resource library soon. Our next chat is Thursday, September 4th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And our deep dive topic will be review season prep. We're talking AR, we're talking procurement reviews, CACFP reviews. Which reminds me, we're also going to be doing a procurement review support group for pro members and clients. So if you're on procurement review this year, you'll definitely want to keep an eye out for more details around that. I also wanted to remind everyone that membership with LunchAssist Pro and access to the training library, AR Bootcamp, and consulting services are a great use of your KIP funds. And of course, membership can always be purchased with your cafeteria funds. Thank you again to all of our members and customers for making this happen. Please schedule a call with Mike to learn more. He'll walk you through it. I'll put his email in the chat. It's mike@lunchassist.org. And with that, I would like to open it up to Q&A.